Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
All right, we go for the FantasyGuru.com Sunday Night Wrap-Up Podcast. Paul Kelly here, and John, are you with us tonight?
Yes, sir, I am. I apologize for that. The little thing, he wouldn't let me view the clip for my own name, so I figured we'll give Mr. Caplan a little shout-out.
There you go. Threw me a curveball with Mr. Caplan, who I know is taking in the Eagles game today, and we will get to that soon enough. But, week 6 around the league, couple of key injuries that we'll get to during the course of this podcast as we go game by game, player by player. But week 6, good week, bad week, somewhere in the middle. What do you think?
It was a pretty crazy week. I'm just really a little self-loathing here, a couple of calls that we made with the projections. And it's difficult because I'm one who... projections are just what they are, projections. And they are based on a lot of variables and things like that. They're not exactly rankings. So I try to work in the projections what should be rankings. In other words, you don't want to go crazy over a lower-end guy with a good matchup. For the most part, we do a good job at that. A couple of times in this game, in this week, we screwed up a little bit here, like Tom Brady. Brutal matchup. We had him at like 10. And, of course, trying to figure out Bill Belichick is a nightmare. But they come out throwing, and he puts up big-time numbers. So we got to do a better job of accounting for players who have really proven it to us in the past. And maybe we give those guys the benefit of the doubt when the matchup looks brutal. But, no one would have been surprised if Brady had a bad game or Ahmad Bradshaw had a bad game against your Niners. So it is what it is. We continue to learn lessons every week. Even though I've been doing this for 18 years, I keep learning these lessons, Paul.
Well, the first game we'll take a look at here, Atlanta at home against the Raiders. They win it 23-20. We thought maybe the Falcons' passing game would have a bit better day than they ended up having. For whatever reason, just wasn't happening for them today. But Matt Ryan, 24 of 37 for 249 and a touch, but 3 INTs, very uncharacteristic for him.
This is another one. This is a really good example of you just try and map things out the way things should go, and man, anybody who was not loving the Falcons today was crazy. But Matt Ryan was off. He's been kind of off here a little bit here, throwing some interceptions, underthrowing some balls. I think it's starting to kind of level out to where those two receivers are unbelievable. Tony Gonzalez is fantastic, but ultimately Matt Ryan isn't an elite talent, so he will come up small. I think I wrote that or said that a couple of weeks ago, maybe on the radio, that he will come up a little small here and there. He's not Aaron Rodgers, but what can you do? You had to start him. 249 and a touch isn't a horrendous game. Of course, if you got penalized for the interceptions, as I did in a couple of leagues that I have him in, that did hurt. So big-time buzzkill, but let's give some credit to the Raiders, too. They played well defensively.
Yep, they sure did. Roddy White ended up coming through for you, 6 for 72 and a touchdown. Julio Jones looked like he was getting it going early, but then kind of quiet as the game went on. Tony Gonzalez, the first game that he didn't really go bonkers for you at tight end. Talking about these running backs, though, I mean, just 11 carries for Michael Turner, just 5 total touches on the day for Jacquizz Rodgers. Neither one of those guys worth using today. A bit surprising.
I know. And Turner, we had him high. Based on the matchup, you figure they're going to move the ball. They'll probably have a lead. They'll wear him down. It obviously didn't happen. So, again, we credit the Raider D. We credit the Raider offense. They reeled off a lot of plays. They ran the ball 32 times, which I did say that this morning. If the Raiders could give McFadden 30 carries, they will. And he got 27. So, again, it was just NFL football. You just chalk it up to NFL football. We got to pull back a little bit from Turner. He's once again that guy with Ryan, a little shaky. He's that guy that can come up small for you. Hardly a lock. He's a guy that should be ranked usually in the low teens pretty much every week, meaning most people are probably still starting him, but it's possible, certainly, to have 2, maybe even 3 options who are better. As for Jacquizz Rodgers, I gave him another shot here this week simply because this matchup looks so good, but I think at this point, I've been saying this too a little bit, dude hasn't done anything. He's he's not that good. I hate to say it. He needs to get in space. He's a small guy. I mean, I see the comparisons of Maurice Jones-Drew. I was like, whoa, I don't think he's that strong. They're not using him in the passing attack that well. So he's just there. He really is very hard to rely on right now.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's kind of like he's just a change of pace guy. He's got less than 200 total yards through the first 6 games of the season, so I don't know that you can keep using him at this point. Yeah, I mean, until we see something more, you really can't use him at this point. You mentioned McFadden. You pretty much hit his projections right on the head. 27 carries, 30 touches in the game, as you said, 98 total yards. Got the touchdown late, thank goodness. He really having trouble getting going on the ground. I'm guessing that's more of a function of this offensive line right now, John?
Yeah, they're not. I think it's a couple of things. It's obviously still a work in progress. I just think that when McFadden's back there, the defense is just, they're still like, okay, we're going to stop Darren McFadden. And when you see Mike Goodson get back there, he's got a lot more room to run because I just think the defenses see Goodson, they're not ready for the run. And Goodson, you're like, wow, this guy he's got all kinds of space. And I mean, if McFadden had that kind of space, boy, he'd be putting up 150, 200 yards. So it's still a work in progress, but McFadden did get all those carries, got the touchdown, thank God. The matchups are going to be good here, as we've outlined. They're going to look better, and they did get him involved a little bit in the passing attack. He got you an extra 5 points in a PPR. So, today's day overall in the PPR was good. And the matchups, like I said, will be better, and he's not hurt. I know he missed a little bit of time with that shoulder. They pulled him out a little bit, but otherwise he's healthy. So you're looking at a schedule now. He's got Jacksonville. That's a great matchup. He's at Kansas City. That's a good matchup. Tampa could be problematic. Baltimore's getting run on. New Orleans, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Denver, KC, Carolina. All you got to do is just pray McFadden stays healthy. If he's healthy, he will absolutely be in the top 10 this year, and you'll be glad you took him. So it's where he is now.
Carson Palmer throws for 353 and a touch. Denarius Moore caught 5 of those passes for 104 and a touchdown. What he's doing now, I mean, basically no training camp for this guy. Didn't play in week 1. Hasn't had a ton of time with Carson Palmer. Really seems to be coming on right now, though.
Absolutely. I think you should start him every week as no worse than your third receiver. He is. We're worried about, we had him at 24 this week. We're worried about injuries a little bit with this guy because he's not a big guy. He got dinged up in the game. I'm like, oh, boy, here we go. And then he came back in, but he led the team in targets. The kid pops off the screen a little bit. There's no question. Palmer likes throwing it to him. He's a playmaker. He can do a little bit more. He's not just a one-trick pony. He's looking really strong right now, Paul. And Darius Haywood-Bay returned, which is great, but his role was very limited, only 2 targets in the game. And Derek Hagan kind of basically filled his role still, and they threw it to Myers. But Denarius Moore is the guy in their passing game.
Next up, Dallas at Baltimore. The Ravens win 31-21. Or 31-29 rather. This one came down to the final play of the game. And let's start with the Ravens on offense as they seem to be transitioning to more of a passing team. Joe Flacco, 17 of 26 for 234 and a touchdown to Torrey Smith. Ray Rice scored twice in this game, even though he only carried 16 times. He's got 5 touchdowns now in his first 6 games, averaging just about 120 yards per week. Rock solid as your number 1 running back.
Yeah, I think Ray Rice is, you could argue, is the best back in football right now, maybe even a little bit better than Foster. I know Foster's great and all that, but he is in such a great situation, Foster, and he's not really dominating. We're watching the game tonight against Green Bay. He's not really doing all that much. Rice is just obviously money in the bank. We didn't love Flacco this way. I think we hit it pretty close here, what he actually did, 234 and a touch. We didn't love the receivers, although Bolden did come through. I was a little surprised at that one, 5 for 98. That was a week to sit him. If you started him, if you sat him, you did the right thing. Because when he's up against a solid secondary, it's time to be concerned about Bolden. But he did come through. And now, Paul, with the injuries on defense, Ladarius Webb, believed to have suffered an ACL. Ray Lewis may be out for a while. You got to think that he'll have to throw it a little bit more. This could be a little bit of a bump for Joe Flacco going forward, and the receivers, of course.
Yep, we could see more of these kinds of games where the Ravens are going to need to score more points to win, so that's certainly something to keep an eye on as we transition over to the Dallas Cowboys. And DeMarco Murray got off to a fantastic start in this one, 14 carries, 93 yards, all in the first half, did not play in the second half. What do we know about his condition right now?
Yeah, I know the X-rays were negative, so we're not going to. I mean, it's ultimately not serious at this point, but obviously we'll have to learn more pending MRIs and all that on Monday. But again, the X-rays were negative. It was a real shame because boy, they were gashing the Ravens. The Ravens were just god-awful against the run, and even Felix Jones looked good, and I guess he got hurt too. So they had to go down to Philip Tanner, and then Lance Dunbar, the kid, played a little bit. So we'll see. Certainly was a good sign for their offense and their rushing attack, but obviously it's a moot point if Murray's going to miss time, and that's a shame because he was well on his way to having a huge game, and that is a concern with Murray. We've kind of talked about how he's really running hard, inviting contact. You do worry about durability with this guy, and the red flag has officially been waved in terms of Murray getting injured.
Dez Bryant, big game for him, 13 catches, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns, dropped the 2-point conversion, though, when they needed it at the end of the game, but fantastic day for fantasy. Outside of that, pretty quiet day for the other receivers here. Witten caught 6 for 88, but Austin didn't do much. Ogletree, if you still have him on your roster, you could probably just let him go at this point, right?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say, as I got 40 tweets week one, that first game of the season, about whether or not he's this year's LaRon Robinson. Pretty safe to say he is not, although he did have a near touchdown that wouldn't have counted anyway. It really should have been a touchdown. But they basically are they're kind of all in on Dez Bryant right now. And I know he's maddening a little bit and he's inconsistent and he makes mistakes, mental mistakes, but he is playing his ass off. You got to give the kid some credit for that. 15 targets, 13 games, huge game in a PPR. I did write this morning. He was due for a touchdown, and he scores a couple of them. So he's a guy you're going to keep starting, and Miles Austin, too, for the most part, has been very consistent, and Jason Witten now 2 good games in a row. So things could be looking worse for Dallas, pending the injury updates on Murray and Felix Jones. I think we lost Mr. Paul Kelly there, so I'll continue on my own here, flying solo. There he is. I think he's back. I don't even know if that's not him. All right, we'll continue on my own here. We'll look at Cincinnati and Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns winning, actually, beating the Bengals 34-24, and we look at the targets here, and obviously the injury to Trent Richardson, a big-time buzzkill, big-time problem there. Montario Hardesty is the clear handcuff here. He has no value if Richardson is healthy, but Hardesty is the number 2 running back. He came in there, he scored a touchdown. From what I saw, he was decent. Didn't look as good as he looked in the preseason. Decent, though, so we'll see about Richardson. Looked like he wanted to go back into the game, but out there on the sideline with his helmet on for a while there. Josh Gordon continues to have that downfield mojo with quarterback Brandon Weeden, so he is pretty darn valuable right now. Let's put this. Paul, is that you, sir?
Hey, I am back.
Oh, okay. I didn't recognize you on the board there. Okay, just breaking down the Browns and the Bengals, talking about their backfield for Cleveland. How Hardesty is. He's the number 2. He's the handcuff. Has no value if Richardson's out, but if Richardson is out, Hardesty's the guy. No question about it. And he did score a touchdown. Looked okay.
Yeah, where are we at with Richardson's condition right now?
Yeah, I don't have an update on that, unfortunately.
Okay.
You would think it's relatively minor, but we'll find out. We'll find out on Monday. We'll find out later, early in the week.
Boy, how about that Josh Gordon now? 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. For a while there, he had 3 receptions in a row that were all touchdowns, but caught 3 balls in this game for 99. By comparison, Greg Little goes 3 for 18. Josh Gordon's the guy clearly here who's got the most upside in this offense as far as the receivers go.
You got to love the downfield mojo he's got with Brandon Weeden, who continues now, 5 good games in a row for Weeden. So Weeden continues to put up decent numbers here, only 29 attempts, and that 71-yarder obviously padded the stats a little bit. But Josh Gordon is clearly more comfortable. He's got chemistry with Weeden. And, again, the downfield stuff is good stuff. He's a very talented guy. So, I don't know if he's one of these guys like if you need him, you're going to use him. And I know he's got 3 touchdowns here in his last 2 games. If you need him, you'll use him. But I'm still not to the point where I would start him over a guy like Malcolm Floyd or, let's see, Vincent Jackson, Stevie Johnson, Denarius Moore, something like that. I wouldn't use him over those guys, but certainly if you're hurting a little bit or in a deeper league, use the guy because he's getting it done.
For the Bengals, Andy Dalton threw 46 passes in the game, completed 31 for 381 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 INTs. Interesting to point out here, this is the 3rd time in 6 games this season that he's gone for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in the same game, John.
Amazing, yeah. They can't really run the ball. I mean, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis is just he popped off a 20-yard run, but other than that, his yard per carry average was really, really low, and that was a good matchup. So I don't know how we can use this guy. He seems to be allergic to the end zone. He's starting to fumble. Cedric Pierman, I guess because the receiving core didn't really step up here. 8 targets. Where the heck did that came from? That came out of nowhere. 8 catches, 76 yards. Andy Dalton has been great here other than really one game last week, so he's a top 15 guy easily, and you could certainly do worse for your starter. He's got Adriel Jeremiah Green, who's just, oh man, he's unbelievable. Unbelievable, A.J. Green. And Jermaine Gresham has now been good 4 games in a row. So again, I know I bailed after those first 2 games because he looked so terrible, but as I wrote the last 2 weeks, clearly he was not healthy. So that's a lesson we got to remember. When a guy's got an injury in the preseason, he shuts it down, then he comes back, you got to give him some time here. So Gresham, Paul, the last 4 weeks is exactly what I thought he'd be. You look at the numbers, it's not great, but it's solid. It's like 5 catches, 55 yards, a touchdown every other week. That's right around where he is the last month.
A.J. Green has scored 5 games in a row now for the Bengals. As we move on, Miami at home holds off the Rams 17-14. Ryan Tannehill throws 2 touchdowns on the day. He only had 2 in his first 5 games combined. Also threw for just 185 yards, though. Kind of a strange day of offense for the Dolphins. Reggie Bush, just 12 carries for 17 yards, but probably the most strange thing and the thing that people are wondering about, Brian Hartline not only didn't have a catch in the game, didn't have a pass target in the game.
Yeah, apparently I believe he got at least one where it was a flag. I guess the play obviously doesn't count. You look at the stat sheet here, it comes up as 0 targets, but yeah, very bizarre. We knew the matchup was tougher, but he's beaten tougher matchups in the past. So it's weird. I mean, the guy goes from 200 yards one week to no catches and 0 targets on the stat sheet. So it's very bizarre. So we got to pull back a little bit from Hartline because he just continues to have these tough matchups. This week it was Cortland Finnegan and the Rams, Patrick Peterson the week he went off, Darrelle Revis before that. So he always seemingly has a tough matchup, but at least Tannehill is playing well. Devon Best is pretty safe in a PPR for 10, 12, 14 points maybe in a good day. And Tannehill continues to be somewhat viable. Very efficient here. No interceptions. Couple of touchdowns, 21-29. This guy is pretty legitimate here, all things considered. The buzzkill, the main one, was Reggie Bush, who did just miss a touchdown. He had a nice little run where he got tackled at the 1, but terrible day for Bush. Very strange.
Let's move it over to St. Louis, and Danny Amendola out for a while, so who would step up and replace those catches at receiver? Brandon Gibson caught 7 for 91. The rookie Gibbons really seems to be their downfield threat right now. 3 catches, 85 yards, had the big 65-yard reception, but it looks like they might have something here with Gibbons.
Yeah, we've been giving him love, even back to the preseason. I believe he was on our watch list for our values and targets because I had heard from someone close to the team that the kid really does everything well in the classroom and all that, totally gets it, and he's absolutely flashing. Again, this was not an easy matchup against a good defense. I didn't really think that they would have time to throw it down the field, but he got a 65-yarder. He can run very well and make plays, clearly. And Bradford, very quietly, has been good. I know he doesn't get a touchdown here, but he does throw for 315 against a darn good defense. So I would pick up Chris Gibbons, absolutely, for some upside, nice depth guy in a deeper league, no question about it. Gibson I did kind of like. I pointed out he'll probably get 5-6 catches in the game. He gets 7 for 91. Hard to trust, but I think for all intents and purposes, he is their number one wide receiver.
Yeah, now what else can we take away from this game for the Rams? Well, it seems like Darrell Richardson is going to have a role each and every week in the offense, where today the touches between him and Jackson pretty much split 50-50.
Yep, and there was a time where it's like Steven Jackson's on the sideline ready to play, and Richardson was the guy for basically half the game. And he does give them a different look. He's can run it downhill inside a little bit, but he's fast and he's got some speed. Though we should mention, the matchup was brutal. You look at the yard per carry average, like, oh, he's great. Well, he did pop off a 44-yarder. Otherwise, he was contained. Miami's run defense is very good. Although I was surprised that Jackson had a couple of runs where he got free. He averaged 4.3. But this is terrible for Steven Jackson because he could be gone at the end of the year. They love Richardson. This is going to continue all season long, I believe, Paul.
Jets at home against the Colts today. Did a number on the Colts. 35-9 is your final. And Mark Sanchez tossed a couple of touchdowns to the Hills. Stephen Hill had one. Jason Hill had one. But Sean Green, the story on offense for the Jets. 32 carries, 161 yards, 3 touchdowns. He only had 1 touchdown in his first 5 games combined. Goes for 3 today, so if you needed him, there he is.
Yeah, there he is, and get out there and sell this week because we'll be hard-pressed to duplicate this. He did this last year. He had that one huge game with 3 touchdowns, but give him some credit. He did run hard. They had room because the Colts were god-awful against the run. They were absolutely brutal. Bilal Powell did get injured as well. It looks like that one could be fairly serious, so we did see a little Joe McKnight action that could possibly continue for the Jets, but really, let's be honest, their body of work, and they're hanging in there. They are hanging in there, but their body of work running the football is not very good, and you can't really still, despite this huge performance, have a lot of confidence in Mr. Sean Green. Their receiving core was stronger. We got Dustin Keller back, only 1 target, though. Stephen Hill back, only 3, but he did score. So now it's something. It's between Curly Hill, Schillens, and Keller. It's a little bit better, which could help their offense have some respectability, but I'm not really exactly counting on that.
Yeah, give the Jet defense a lot of credit. They did a nice job today containing Andrew Luck in this Colt offense. He completed just 50% of his passes for 280 yards, no scores, a couple of picks. Reggie Wayne held in check, got most of his numbers late in garbage time, ended up getting 5 for 87. Vic Ballard, a guy, big hot waiver wire guy this week. Figured he might get some volume in this game. Ended up with 10 touches for 42. Not that he's a special player, but he really didn't help you too much today if you needed him.
Well, yeah, that was the other one we got. We were a little way overboard. Now, it looks terrible now, but we did rank him at 20. And I did actually write this morning, unless the Jets score a lot of points, he'll get volume, which, yeah, I wrote it. Did I expect it to happen? Not really. And it did, though, and they controlled the ball. They took him out. He needs volume. He did get 3 targets and 2 catches. I still think that he'll score some touchdowns. They got to balance out this offense. The offensive line has been banged up too. That doesn't help. But Andrew Luck, as good as he's been for fantasy, we have kind of pointed it out here and there that he's been great for fantasy and he runs, which he didn't today. So that really helps. And between the defense, between his running, the poor defense, him throwing a lot, he's getting it done for fantasy. But NFL-wise, he's been a little shaky, and that kind of came to a head in this one. No touchdowns. He threw for 280. You mentioned Wayne. He got, I want to say contained because he put up 5 for 87. A lot of that was late, real late, because Cromartie was balling out there. Now, the real disappointing thing was Avery, because we did like Avery. I think it was a good call to make. He had 12 targets. You got to figure they're going to throw to him a lot with Cromartie on Wayne, which they did, but continues to have a really bad catch rate. He does get 4 for 60. Week before, he just missed a long touchdown, but you got to be pretty desperate at this point. I'm looking for these tight ends to step up here because someone else has got to help Luck. And maybe it's Kobe Fleener, who's coming on a little bit the last couple of weeks, 6 targets, 4 for 42, although Dwayne Allen also still in the mix. So to summarize here, it's still a work in progress. We went a little overboard on Ballard. I still like him. I still think he's a viable flex guy for many. I was actually talking on the radio today about he's a guy, you use him if you need him. You don't go crazy. We did have him ranked higher than a guy like Steven Jackson. Who else? Fred Jackson, who did score, so maybe that wasn't too bad. So we got to pull back a little bit here. He should be ranked in the low 20s while he's starting for Don Brown.
Detroit at Philadelphia. Lions win in overtime, 26-23. Let's start with the Eagles' offense. And at the end of this game, Michael Vick put up good numbers for fantasy, over 300 yards passing, a couple of touchdowns, ran for 59 yards, still taking plenty of shots. Even though the numbers were there, I wouldn't say he played particularly well. He had the long 70-yard touchdown pass to Jeremy Maclin, which helped his stats as well. Really no success running the ball in this game, though. LaShawn McCoy, 14 carries, 22 yards on the day. Gave us a little bit of a scare, too. He was down with the ankle, rolling around. Looked like he was really in pain, but he did come back in the game, so I guess he's okay. But the Eagles' offense, even though the numbers were there for Vic by the end of the day, it really wasn't very consistent throughout this game.
No, it was not good at all. And by the way, I just got an update on Trent Richardson. He did say after the game that he'll be ready to go next week, as I expected. Didn't seem like it was that serious of an injury. Looked like he could have played last week, or played in the game.
Yeah.
Okay, back to the Eagles. No update on McCoy. Obviously, we all know he had the ankle. He left briefly. He did return. And once again, they don't give him enough carries. I don't know if the injury, I guess, was a factor there, but we liked Vic, and we liked, we love Maclin today. He came through, but I'll tell you, oh, man, a little bit of garbage time, a little bit on the strength of a 70-yard touchdown for Vic, taking a boatload of shots. And I got to tell you, if you got Vic on the heels of this solid game, get out there and try and sell, because it's ugly in Philadelphia, Paul. They could be easily without a win right now. Without a win, the Philadelphia Eagles, it's not good there in Philly.
Let's move it over to the Lions, and let's talk a bit about their offense. Matt Stafford completed less than 50% of his passes, over 300 yards passing, just one touchdown, though, and then went to Nate Burleson. Calvin Johnson ends up with a decent day, 6 catches for 135. Has not been scoring touchdowns, though, this year for whatever reason. Teams are just doubling this guy all day long, especially when they get down close. But if it's not Calvin Johnson, you expect one of the other receivers or maybe Pettigrew to step up and have a bigger day. Burleson did get the touchdown, but outside of that, the rest of these receivers weren't really worth using today.
This whole offense has just been off this year, just disjointed. I don't exactly know what it is. Stafford's been off. They're not really getting others to step up. I think maybe Titus Young, his downfield mojo has been a missing element. Titus Young's been a bit of a train wreck. Burleson is just a possession guy at this point. You can't expect much. I did like him today to do something. He did score. I thought Pettigrew would do a lot more than he did. He's been a disappointment. They did get Scheffler involved, but it's been shaky. It's been real shaky. I guess they win the game, so things won't unravel. And I did like Stafford in this game because I figured Philly would put up points, and I thought he'd throw it 40-plus and get the numbers, which essentially happened, but yeah. I can't say my confidence level with Stafford is very high right now. LaShawn did look pretty good, though, against a good run defense, had a couple of nice runs, and got a little bit involved in the passing attack. So that's okay. He's a solid guy. Joique Bell is like the hurry-up back, and Kevin Smith, who was inactive, is dead for Detroit right now. But they win the game. They have a decent day for fantasy. I don't feel beautiful about them, but I know a lot of their next games are at home. They do play better at home, so there is some hope here, but it's still shaky in my eyes for the Lions.
Next up, Tampa Bay and Kansas City. Buccaneers win it easily, 38-10 at home. Josh Freeman is back on the fantasy radar, as I think I saw you tweet earlier this afternoon. 328 yards, 3 TDs, 2 of them to Vincent Jackson. Also encouraging, though, Doug Martin, 131 total yards today.
Yeah, a little disappointed that Leg Blunt got that touchdown, 35-yard run, and vultured that from Martin. And for most of the game, unfortunately, it wasn't looking good for Martin. He popped off a really nice 42-yard catch and run, which certainly helped. But for most of the game, his numbers were terrible. He got some volume late, which I thought would happen because it was KC. I'm not sure we're out of the woods yet with with Doug Martin, but they do want to run the ball. Their passing attack showed some signs of life. I think it's all on Josh Freeman. Can Josh Freeman keep this up? I think he is back on the radar, but I do worry that there's just not much here at receiver. You got Vincent Jackson and Mike Williams. They're fine. They both had good games. I did like Mike Williams today. He came through. Obviously, Jackson had 2 touchdowns. But how much do they have at receiver? They got nothing at tight end. Tyquan Underwood's playing the slot a little bit. I don't know if that's an ideal role for him, but he does contribute here. Adds to Freeman's totals with that catch and run for 62. So I feel better about Freeman after the last 6 quarters, but I'm not sold just yet because, again, it's not much of a receiver, man.
For the Chiefs today, Matt Castle out, Brady Quinn in, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but can we get Matt Castle back in here, please? I mean, it was bad for this offense today. Dwayne Bowe couldn't even get his usual garbage time production going, just 3 catches for 21 on the day, so that's a buzzkill. Jamal Charles coming off 3 really nice games in a row, touched the ball just 14 times in this game for 47 yards. Sean Drone also got 14 touches in the game, but literally not a single player worth using for fantasy on the Chiefs today.
Yeah, real surprise, but Tampa's defense against the run has been pretty good here, so I guess that was a function of the lack of production was a function of Tampa's D playing well. I haven't seen a lot of this game, quite frankly. I'll have to watch it and see what happened, but not a good sign that they spread the ball around, I'll tell you that, because what you really like about Bowe is that he is the foundation of their passing attack. Now, he does lead the team in targets with 9, but they got McCluster back involved. He had been dead for a while. Sean Drawn continues to get snaps and touches and catches. Baldwin had 5 targets. Oh, man, this is getting real ugly in Kansas City. You got to keep using Charles and most likely Bowe, but another stinker or 2, then we got to reassess things.
Buffalo wins in Arizona today. Another exciting overtime finish, 19-16. And for the Buffalo Bills on offense, hopefully you sold high on Ryan Fitzpatrick a couple of weeks ago. He had 12 touchdowns in the first 4 games of the season, none last week, none this week. He hasn't topped 200 yards passing in either of those 2 games. So clearly Fitzpatrick coming back down to earth. But let's talk about these 2 running backs, C.J. Spiller, Freddie Jackson, both scored touchdowns today, but clearly C.J. Spiller is just so electric when he gets the ball in his hands. I mean, any chance that they commit to him as the guy, or as long as both of these guys are healthy, are we looking at a timeshare like we saw today?
Boy, I think, well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but I will say this. It's obvious that Spiller is going to be a big part of their offense. So maybe they'll both be big parts as they were today, because obviously it's not happening with Ryan Fitzpatrick and this passing attack. I mean, for a guy, Donald Jones, for a guy who gets 99% of the snaps, this guy is worthless. I mean, he is not doing a thing. And again, Fitzpatrick's real shaky. So bottom line, I've been talking it up a little bit. Spiller, I think you just start him every week. You just start him every week because he's so dynamic. He looked great again. He looked good last week, too, and with limited touches against the 49ers. He is a special runner. There's no question in my mind. And he can do a lot. There's no doubt. Runner, receiver, all that. So I think I like him better than Fred Jackson. I think that's the bottom line. I think Fred Jackson is a good player, viable. Most people are probably using him as at worst a flex, and you kind of accept what he gives you. But I think Spiller's got to move up. I'm going to be ranking Spiller higher than Jackson going forward because this kid is really electric right now.
Now, for the Cardinals, Ryan Williams out for the season. Beanie Wells is on IR. So William Powell, one of the big waiver wire pickups of the week, ended up with 14 touches and 78 yards. Not bad on the day, but a strange day of offense for the Cardinals. Figured up against the Buffalo defense, they really might be able to get it going. Kevin Cobb was running for his life pretty much all day, even ran for 66 yards. But at the end of the day, Fitzgerald gets his 6 catches, 93 yards, and a touchdown. Beyond that, though, really not much else going on today for the Cardinals.
Yeah, and Cobb had a rib injury, so Skelton came in there up and down as usual, but he did make a couple of really nice throws. That one throw, I think, there was a couple of really good throws to Fitzgerald, who stepped up at the end. Yeah, not much else going on here. I thought Roberts would do a lot more than he did. Hard to rely on this passing attack other than Fitzgerald. But William Powell, I think, is going to be the guy going forward. I mean, look, we all knew that. Stevens Howling was a starter in name only. He did get 11 carries, Stevens Howling, which surprised me a little bit. I don't get it why they don't use him in the passing attack more, only 2 targets, because he can be a little bit of a Darren Sproles type. But the thing about Powell, he's a smaller guy. He's not a guy that you're necessarily going to just line up and try and run it with, as they were unsuccessfully with Ryan Williams. He creates some space. He gets in space, and he gets positive yardage. He had popped off a couple of nice plays, 17-yarder, average 5.4 a carry behind that O-line. That just goes to show that he can kind of create on his own. So he's the guy, I think, for the next 2 months. So he's a solid flex starter going forward.
Next game up, Seattle with a big win at home against the Patriots, 24-23. Russell Wilson, 293 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no INTs. The question is, John, did Russell Wilson become an NFL quarterback today? It was a big game for him.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. He did. You got to give him credit. There's no doubt. I'm not sure I trust him, because I remember basically what this team is all about. This team is all about defense, and it's all about Marshawn Lynch. Now, maybe they, release the shackles a little bit more going forward, but he did only still complete 27 passes, or attempt 27 passes, only completed 16 passes, and just so happened to make some big plays. I mean, the passer rating, all the numbers look mind-boggling and really good, but I'm not so sure that they're going to move more toward Wilson now. I know he's kind of holding off. The good news is he's been holding off Matty Flynn, and obviously after this one, he probably distanced himself from Flynn a little bit, so he's going to be the guy here. Sidney Rice, your number 1 receiver, your prototypical guy, was really doing nothing before that long catch. Shocking that play that Doug Baldwin made. I actually started Doug Baldwin by accident in one of my leagues.
No way.
Oh, yeah, I never checked I benched Gresham and Kyle Rudolph in one league and didn't even start a tight end. That's how bad I am with my teams these days. Rice is viable. I don't trust anyone else here. Wilson, I'm not ready to say he's a viable starter, but clearly this was a nice performance. But also, New England's pass defense is not very good.
Yeah, now for the Patriots, a team that we've seen morph into more of a running team this season, Tom Brady throws a career-high 58 pass attempts today in this one. 395 yards, a couple of touchdowns, 1 to Welker, 1 to Hernandez. Something of note here, Brandon Bolden did leave this game with an injury. Not that Stephen Ridley was able to get much going on the ground, but moving forward, that probably does create an opportunity for a guy like Danny Woodhead to be more involved, if he's going to be out for any stretch of time.
Yeah, Bolden with a knee, and he's been dealing with that for a little while. We actually kind of liked Woodhead in this game, because I figured this would be a kind of a game where they use a guy like Woodhead a little bit more against such a really good run defense. I should have known that the Patriots would just go pass happy. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. I was just worried about I did give Brady 2 touchdowns, which is what he got, but we only gave him I gave him 240 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is pretty good actually.
Yeah,
but
sure.
But that ranked him only 10. I guess that's what I feel bad about. So I guess we didn't blow it completely. We gave him 240 and 2 touchdowns. But, geez, he throws for almost 400 here. We did get it right that it would be a huge Wes Welker game. That we got correct. I didn't like Lloyd, though. That was a hard one to get behind. I just didn't see a lot of downfield throws. But he comes through at 6 for 80, and that's going to happen when your quarterback's throwing it 58 times. He also just missed. Did you see that catch down the right sideline, full extension dive?
Wow.
This guy is unbelievable.
He makes those kinds of plays. Regardless of the fact the guy's out of bounds, that's a phenomenal catch that, this guy seems to make him routinely week after week.
Yeah, he's a magician. Gronkowski didn't have a huge game. Hernandez, what can we say? He got 9 targets. It was tricky. He didn't do much in practice on Friday. We did write on Sunday today that, probably a good sign for him to play. But we had to say, look, it's a little risky to go with him. You take away the one play, the touchdown, he has only 5 catches for 30 yards, so maybe he was still limited, but he looked pretty good on that touchdown.
Wes Welker, 4 straight games over 100 yards. And that's if you're a Welker owner, you got to be encouraged. Aaron Hernandez back to see Welker as involved as he was today, even with Hernandez back.
Yeah, I was talking about maybe due to the injuries to Hernandez and Edelman, that maybe we'd reach a point of no return, because it was clear that they were pulling away from him. That's indisputable because of the snap counts the first couple of games. But then, obviously, the injuries occurred, and he was really carrying the offense. So maybe maybe that was a point of no return, although we'll see going forward when Edelman is back and Hernandez is 100%. But clearly the panicking over Welker does look a little silly right now.
New York Giants went into San Francisco and beat up the 49ers 26-3. So we'll start with the Giants on offense and give them a lot of credit. They were able to run the football against the 49ers, which is something not a lot of teams have been able to do. Ahmad Bradshaw, coming off a 200-yard performance last week, goes for 120 total yards and a score in this one. David Wilson got some carries late, but really the offense was all about Bradshaw today.
Yeah, we only ranked him at like 21, which I think was fair based on the matchup, but you got to give Bradshaw credit. He's bringing it. He's the guy. I mean, David Wilson did get 7 carries for a nice 35 yards, which is a good sign for Wilson. So this could be the situation moving forward where David Wilson gets you 7, 8 carries, because that was clearly the plan. And maybe they even utilize him in the passing attack too, because he can catch the football. He is kind of used to being in this type of environment as a change-up type of a runner. So David Wilson may have some value, but clearly it's all about Bradshaw. So now the only question is, can he stay healthy? That's still a concern in my eyes, because he's getting a lot of carries here and he does wear down. So I don't know about trading him. We did have him as a guy to trade last week. It could go down as a good move if you don't necessarily need him, because his value is pretty high right now. And I don't know about you, Paul. Are you confident he's going to be running this well in December?
No, that's certainly very, very questionable. You know, it's unusual to see him play in all the games. He's already missed a game this year, but unusual to see him stay healthy all season long. And a guy who seems to be a bit healthier back in the lineup today, Hakeem Nicks. 3 catches for 44. Hopefully you didn't need to start him, but Victor Cruz, as usual, comes through for the Giants. Another touchdown today. He's got 6 in 6 games so far. As we move it over to the 49ers, and tough day on offense. Alex Smith, 3 INTs, very unusual for him. Niner running game, really never got a chance to get going in this one, and really just an ugly day of offense for the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm shocked. I thought the Giant D has been vulnerable. It's in San Fran. Their secondary's still banged up. The pass rush hasn't been coming on. Smith was razor sharp last week, but once again, Alex Smith is a week-to-week guy. You just can't trust him. And they're playing Kaepernick a lot too. So, I got to pull back from Smith. I did like Manningham actually as a reach, and he was active. He did have 5 for 72, but everybody else came up small. Crabtree and Vern Davis. So, and even Frankie Gore. I don't know what else to say. I'm just kind of blown away here. The 49ers came up really small, Paul.
Yeah, Vernon Davis, 4 touchdowns in his first 3 games, has not scored in any of the last 3. Let's move on and go to the Redskins at home against the Vikings. They win 38-26 behind RG3, who ran for 138 yards and 2 scores today, including that long 76-yard run. He's got 6 rushing touchdowns on the year, John, which leads the league, and he is on pace for over 1,000 yards on the ground this season.
Yeah, we had him as a guy to trade for last week with the concussion issues, because that was a scare for RG3 owners, but we felt, and I wrote it this morning, look, he plays, he's the guy. He's going to play his normal game. If he's not out there, if he's not able to do that, he won't be out there. So, and we did rank him really high, as we always do. We had him at 4. We projected 22 points. I think he got 22 points rushing the football, just on the ground, for God's sake. So it's incredible. I mean, for the numbers he's putting up are just gargantuan right now. And that's without Pierre Garçon. That's the scary thing here, because clearly he's the best playmaker. Santana Moss is helping out a little bit. Fred Davis has been coming on, but otherwise these guys are all pedestrian. You can't rely on Josh Morgan or Leonard Hankerson or anybody else. But it's crazy, because if they can possibly get him back, Garçon, now you're really looking at a pretty potent offense with RG3. And for fantasy, as I've been saying for a month now, keep starting him until he proves you wrong for doing it. Now, I know last week he did, but he did get injured. But this week he more than made up for it.
Alfred Morris, 16 carries, just 47 yards, but he did run for a score, so he did come through for you if you needed him today. For the Vikings,
defense really good at tackling, Paul. They're rock solid, man. That's a tough matchup for your running back. At least he scored, though.
Yeah, that is a good point. A lot of backs haven't had much success against the Vikings this season, and Morris did get the touchdown, though, like you said. Christian Ponder, though, for the Vikings in this game, had to throw 52 times, 35 completions for 352 yards, a couple of scores, a couple of INTs as well. Percy Harvin, what can you say, man? Every week this guy is just getting it done, and really not scoring a lot of touchdowns, but in a PPR, he's money in the bank. 11 catches, 133 yards, got a couple of rushes in this game as well. But Adrian Peterson, look, he came through for you, especially in a PPR. He caught 7 balls for 50 yards, ran for 79, but any concern at all? The guy hasn't scored since week 1.
Yeah, I don't get. He actually did have a touchdown called back in this game, late in the game. It's bizarre. It really is, because he looks fine. I mean, he doesn't look quite as explosive, and he does look like a guy coming back from an ACL. But he's been more involved this year in the passing game, as you mentioned, and that helps. Set a target in the end zone and all that. It's weird. It's weird he hasn't scored now. Was it 5 weeks in a row, Paul?
Yeah, 5 weeks in a row.
Yeah, 5 weeks. Hasn't scored since week 1. It's crazy. But he's healthy. He's getting the ball. The Redskins are pretty good against the run here. Let's give them some credit, too. But he still averaged 4.6 a pop against them. He did pop off a 32-yarder. Just keep starting him. That's all we can say. I think I said this last week. I don't think he's a buy low. I don't think he's a sell high. I think he's just kind of a hold, and just keep rolling with him and accept what he gives you. Thank God that Kyle Rudolph was active. Look, it helps that Ponder, as you mentioned, threw it 52 times, but Rudolph continues to be money in the bank in the red zone. Also caught a 2-point conversion as well. We did, thank God, we had him high. We had Ponder at 13 this week, so we did have him higher than Alex Smith, thank God. So that was good.
And Sunday Night Football happening right now. We're into the third quarter already in this one. Aaron Rodgers just had a touchdown run called back, but he's already thrown for 3. 2 of them to Jordy Nelson, who people have been kind of complaining about this season, saying, where's he been? Well, tonight, 7 catches, 111 yards, 2 scores with Greg Jennings still out. And, of course, James Jones, all he does is score touchdowns for this offense.
Yeah, we had Jordy as a guy to trade for last week. I thought people were going a little bit overboard with the panicking, because you got to figure the Packers are going to fix things up a little bit here, and it looks like they're doing that tonight against a pretty good defense. And he just missed a touchdown last week, or else we weren't having that conversation. So hopefully some readers got him on the cheap here, because he was a guy last week that you could have just gotten on the cheap and plugged in as your number 3 receiver. That's not bad. It's not bad at all. So you feel better about it. James Jones continues to be he is a touchdown vulture, that guy, man. He can get a lot of touchdowns in a hurry. He's got 5 now in his last, 10 quarters of football? 10, 11 quarters of football. It's pretty darn good. We'll see about Greg Jennings this week, but we learned, when he got injured 2 weeks ago, that they're going to be very cautious. No real reason to go crazy about rushing him back. Rest him up for the stretch run there. Buy low on him, too. I saw somebody send me an offer. He was offered Crabtree for Jennings. I would give up Michael Crabtree for Jennings right now, no question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Randall Cobb continues to be PPR gold. He's cemented a really nice role here. And I think Alex Green looks pretty good, all things considered, as well.
Yeah, I mean, with Benson out, he's the only guy who's carried the ball. Well, John Kuhn had 1 carry for 5 yards, but Green has 13 carries, 41 yards. He's looked pretty good tonight. For the Texans, they're having trouble running the football. That's very uncharacteristic for them. Arian Foster does have the touchdown for them, but just 13 carries and 22 yards. Got to give a lot of credit to the Packer D so far tonight.
Yeah, the Packer D is good, even without B.J. Raji, which is a little surprising, but they're pretty solid against the run. And the Texans just quietly have not exactly run the ball as well. They're running it more often, so Foster's numbers have been really good, but they have not been running it as well. And keep in mind that right side of that O-line has been built up here. And they're not exactly today, but they are just rolling with Foster. Only 2 carries for Ben Tate, which I'm a little surprised about. But at least Andre Johnson's showing some signs of life here.
Well, that'll just about do it for Week 6 of the FantasyGuru.com Sunday Night Wrap-Up podcast. Still plenty of football to be played tonight, tomorrow night as well. So good luck tonight, good luck tomorrow night, and we will talk to you next time.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.
off a lot of plays. They ran the ball 32 times, which I did say that this morning. If the Raiders could give McFadden 30 carries, they will. And he got 27. So, again, it was just NFL football. You just chalk it up to NFL football. We got to pull back a little bit from Turner. He's once again that guy with Ryan. A little shaky. He's that guy that can come up small for you. Hardly a lock. He's a guy that should be ranked usually in the low teens pretty much every week, meaning most people are probably still starting him, but it's possible, certainly, to have two, maybe even three options who are better. As for Jacquizz Rodgers, I gave him another shot here this week simply because this matchup looks so good, but I think at this point, I've been saying this too a little bit, dude hasn't done anything. He's not that good. I hate to say it. He needs to get in space. He's a small guy. I mean, I see the comparisons of Maurice Jones-Drew. I was like, whoa, I don't think he's that strong. They're not using him in the passing attack that well. So he's just there. He really is very hard to rely on right now.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's kind of like he's just a change of pace.
A couple of times in this game, in this week, we screwed up a little bit here, like Tom Brady. Brutal matchup. We had him at like 10, and of course, trying to figure out Bill Belichick is a nightmare. But they come out throwing, and he puts up big time numbers. So we got to do a better job of accounting for players who have really proven it to us in the past, and maybe we give those guys the benefit of the doubt when the matchup looks brutal. But no one would have been surprised if Brady had a bad game or Ahmad Bradshaw had a bad game against your Niners. So it is what it is. We continue to learn lessons every week. Even though I've been doing this for 18 years, I keep learning these lessons, Paul.
Well, the first game we'll take a look at here, Atlanta at home against the Raiders. They win it 23-20. We thought maybe the Falcons' passing game would have a bit better day than they ended up having. For whatever reason, just wasn't happening for them today. But Matt Ryan, 24 of 37 for 249 and a touch, but 3 INTs, very uncharacteristic for him.
This is another one. This is a really good example of you just try and map things out the way things should go, and man, anybody who was not loving the Falcons today was crazy. But Matt Ryan was off. He's been kind of off here a little bit here, throwing some interceptions, underthrowing some balls. I think it's starting to kind of level out to where those two receivers are unbelievable. Tony Gonzalez is fantastic, but ultimately Matt Ryan isn't an elite talent, so he will come up small. I think I wrote that or said that a couple of weeks ago, maybe on the radio, that he will come up a little small here and there. He's not Aaron Rodgers, but what can you do? You had to start him. 249 and a touch isn't a horrendous game. Of course, if you got penalized for the interceptions, as I did in a couple of leagues that I have him in, that did hurt. So big time buzzkill, but let's give some credit to the Raiders, too. They played well defensively.
Yep, they sure did. Roddy White ended up coming through for you, 6 for 72 and a touchdown. Julio Jones looked like he was getting it going early, but then kind of quiet as the game went on. Tony Gonzalez, the first game that he didn't really go bonkers for you at tight end. Talking about these running backs, though, I mean, just 11 carries for Michael Turner, just 5 total touches on the day for Jacquizz Rodgers. Neither one of those guys worth using today. A bit surprising.
I know. And Turner, we had him high. Based on the matchup, you figure they're going to move the ball. They'll probably have a lead. They'll wear him down. It obviously didn't happen. So, again, we credit the Raider D. We credit the Raider offense. They real.
Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
All right. We go to FantasyGuru.com Sunday Night Wrap-Up Podcast. Paul Kelly here. And, John, are you with us tonight?
Yes, sir, I am. I apologize for that. The little thing, he wouldn't let me view the clip for my own name, so I figured we'll give Mr. Caplan a little shout-out.
There you go. Threw me a curveball with Mr. Caplan, who I know was taking in the Eagles game today, and we will get to that soon enough. But, week 6 around the league, a couple of key injuries that we'll get to during the course of this podcast as we go game by game, player by player. But week 6, good week, bad week, somewhere in the middle. What do you think?
It was a pretty crazy week. I'm just really a little self-loathing here. A couple of calls that we made with the projections, and it's difficult because I'm one who projections are just what they are, projections. And they are based on a lot of variables and things like that. They're not exactly rankings. So I try to work in the projections what should be rankings. In other words, you don't want to go crazy over a lower-end guy with a good matchup. For the most part, we do a good job at that.
He's got less than 200 total yards through the first 6 games of the season, so I don't know that you can keep using him at this point. Yeah, I mean, until we see something more, you really can't use him at this point. You mentioned McFadden. You pretty much hit his projections right on the head. 27 carries, 30 touches in the game, as you said, 98 total yards. Got the touchdown late, thank goodness. He really having trouble getting going on the ground. I'm guessing that's more of a function of this offensive line right now, John?
Yeah, they're not. I think it's a couple of things. It's obviously still a work in progress. I just think that when McFadden's back there, the defense is just, they're still like, okay, we're going to stop Darren McFadden. And when you see Mike Goodson get back there, he's got a lot more room to run, because I just think the defenses see Goodson, they're not ready for the run. And Goodson, you're like, wow, this guy he's got all kinds of space. And I mean, if McFadden had that kind of space, boy, he'd be putting up 150, 200 yards. So it's still a work in progress, but McFadden did get all those carries, got the touchdown, thank God. The matchups are going to be good here, as we've outlined. They're going to look better, and they did get him involved a little bit in the passing attack. He got you an extra 5 points in a PPR.